Right, good evening, everybody. We're going live, and I'll give everyone a few moments to get in here. Cringe Walker will hopefully be joining us shortly. Um, that is the plan. Um, this should be streaming now to YouTube and Twitter, like the last couple of times, and I apologise if my voice sounds a bit funny. I've got the coof, so hence why my voice is a bit funny. Um, but I thought I'd do this, lighten up one spirit, because it's been a bit of a just a frustrating blackpilling and experience in the last week in UK and sort of political talk. Um, it's between two Semitic groups of people that we have to love and undying support for. Hello, Bilbo, reporting for duty. Good to see you, sir. Yes, as I said, we said on Iron Duke's channel yesterday we'll be doing a stream, and we're going to talk about, I mean, the number one story of what's been going on in the Holy Land and how this could affect us. It could affect the geopolitical thing. It may even, this may be the start of, this may be the important moment in the American regime. This could be the actual start of the collapse on the ground, let's say. But we shall see. I don't think they can have a front in Ukraine and the front in Israel. I don't think they can have those two competing fronts in the Middle East and in the Levant and in Eastern Europe, especially in open conflicts. I just don't think that's possible today. Hello, military theorist. Good evening to you, sir. Glad you're here, and yeah, as I say, wave for Cringe Walker. In the meantime, I was just going before we talk about the before we talk about the what the going ons in there, it's something Carl Benjamin brought up, and he's been coming to the conclusion that we need to basically get Farage to join the Tory party, and then I guess like the distant people around reform, distant right people then need to join the Tory party en masse. This is after a huge general election defeat. I assume, from what I understand from when he's talked about this recently before, and take over the Conservative Party from within. And I think number one, I there's no chance of a Nigel Farage. And there's no chance of Nigel Farage becoming the leader of the Conservative Party. I mean, he may be able to join, but he will never become leader because the first selection process is the MPs, and most of the Tory MPs are, establishments, stooges. They their ideal man is their ideal person is like the Rishi Sunaks of the world. So they will never vote for Farage. I mean, I think the membership probably would, but then again, depending on the membership numbers, I don't know what the numbers are at the moment. But overall, I don't see it happening because what the Tory party would do is they'll have all these people in, and then they would sort of isolate them to the sidelines, and then sort of slowly contain them and bring them round, or basically make it their position so untenable that they would have to leave. Sort of what happened with the Monday Club. People remember the Monday Club. um, that's like from I mean, you had people from what would become to be the BNP, like Bowden and stuff, people who were slowly removed out from conservative circles. Quite similar to the paleocons in America, Sam Francis and all those characters, Pat Buchanan, they're just sidelined by uh, mainstream conservative talking heads. And on the topic of the paleocons, recently I put a tweet out where I sort of said, without warning, we're back in the early 2000s, and it it really is the case, because we now got like Dinesh D'Souza, that Indian American chap, the owning libs. We're going to own the brain dead woke students on campuses, and say, no, you're just a hypocrite. Yeah. The woke's gone too far. Those sorts of videos, remember, from 2014, 2015. Yeah, I mean that guy's back, and he's been on Tim Pool. He's been on a few podcasts recently now. So he sort of had like a revival in all this week. And yeah, just mainstream conservatives have sort of been like gotten behind the sort of support for Israel. Apart from like Crispin Blunt, though, he's sort of back in Palestine, which is a bit odd. And oh yeah, and Tiger Patel, remember that Muslim Tory councillor from a few years ago, Tiger Patel? He's quit the Tories over the whole Palestine thing. I am told. So that's another great loss for the Tories. I remember it was that video he did. It's just like walking around this really shitty park with sort of like Sri Lankan Bengal music in the background. So yeah, that was a sort of that was a council action, and I think that was the last time the Tories would probably had like a high point before beforehand. Has Cringe Walker stood me up? He said to me, let me know 15 minutes before you begin. Yeah, that's right, Mr. Gently Benevolent. It was the chap who was walking through the park, this derelict park, and then he stood like on top of like a climbing frame and did like a peace sign. Remember that? And there was like there was some graffiti underneath where his sort of his crotch area where he was standing, and it said like an arrow to also say like "blow me" or something. I don't think that was intentional, but yeah, that was quite funny. that was pretty funny at the time. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, this thing Carl Benjamin he was referring to, I think it was with the traditional. What was it? Let me find them. The tradition. I think they're called the tradition. Let's find them. Oh, the traditional British, traditional Britain, the Trad Brit group, traditional British group. They've had they're quite they're really interesting guys. They've had I've been following them for a while actually. They've been hosting a lot of friends. Traditional Britain group. They've had a lot of our friends on here, friends of the channel like Alexander Adams, more recently one. You go over there, watch his speech, and he's done um, quite a lot to help. I have just been informed that Cringe Walker is here, but he's not here. You're not here, Cringe Walker. Hold on a sec. Oh dear. Have I messed up the stream? Have I messed it up? Oh no, here he is. Oh, so we've got our for tonight's stream, we've got our guy in New York. He's deeply embedded within Hamas, and no, not Hamas. Sorry, I should say he's deeply embedded within Mossad. And Mr. Cringewalker, here you are.
Hello, sorry for the delay.
That's right. I assume you've just come back from your meeting with your Mossad agents on
No,
how to undermine smaller Lutheran churches in the Midwest.
I'm not Lutheran.
I know I've listened to the tapes, and I know that you've been identified by a few Lutheran churches as a like an unsavory character, or I forgot what the term they used.
I don't remember. That was months ago. I never really joined any of their churches. I just got tired of it. I want to go back to Rome for a while. So anyway,
Yes. Yeah, so I was just before we started, I was just as we were waiting, I thought I'd talk about what Carl Benjamin. He's been on the Traditional Britain group. I don't know if you've heard of them, Cringe Walker. They are they're sort of like they've been around for a while. They do like the similar events like the Witten and other sort of that I think it's run by two chaps, and I've interacted with one of them. They're they are just traditionalists, and they've I have a feeling they are something to do with, they have like some sort of lineage to the Monday Club, which is like Jonathan Bowden and sort of that sort of area. They're sort of like an offshoot from what happened to them. So
I know
yeah,
none
that's
of
quite.
this.
Oh
I'm
right,
ignorant.
sorry, I'm just going. I went into some deep right wing British law there, so don't worry. Anyway, how are you?
Uh, doing well. Just sad about what's happening in the Middle East yet again. But a bit more on the
Yeah.
isolationism. Just like not my problem.
Well, I mean, I think that's what it's come down for me in many ways, is that one of the problems is and I don't know what the mood is in New York, but I've seen clips. I could probably have a feeling of it. There's a lot of and I called this stream the outsourcing of national anger, and the reason is that I've noticed, like, even in my small small sort of you know rural setting, that there has been, like, if you vote like liberal left wing, then you support Palestine. If you're a conservative, or you're a centre right chap, you have to support Israel. And we've basically outsourced um, any form of identity to basically two really, really fucking just shitty Semitic tribes who are below contempt. And I'm sorry, I don't know how else to really frame it in that way. I mean, when I was in when I was brought where I was brought up, I was around a lot of Arabs and Israelis, and I yeah, the, I cannot stress how much superior the European civilization and Anglo-Saxon civilization is. It so is, and it's just so disheartening to see people in my country and also Americans as well, like white Americans, um, basically fall head over heel for actually caring about what these two groups do, and like it really matters. I mean, the only thing I would say is I do think in the overall geopolitical thing, I do think the Arab countries or the BRIC nations, as a whole, like the Russia's, Iran's, and the Arab League, are testing to see how strong American military power is in the region, because
Maybe.
I
I don't know. It kind of feels as if like today Israel announced they were returning water to Gaza, and everybody seems to be calming down again. But I don't know if it's gonna stay the way. Um, I don't know. It just seems like a boomer war, like another boomer thing, and everyone else is just like, what is the mess? Why are we bothering with this mess again? And I think the boomers are realizing that they just have absolutely no support beyond themselves, and they're kind of realizing they can't actually fight this war because no one wants to fight.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think Israel's going to go into Gaza, because the problem is that they've been saying it for days. Or they were going to go in. It's going to happen. It's going to be air, sea, land, tanks. It's going to be all that. We're going to go into Gaza, and they've been announcing it for days and days, and uh, it's not going to happen. I don't see it happening.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't say. Well, if they went in with like, they can't really go into this like very dense area that's only a few miles wide and long with like millions of people stacked on top of each other. It's just gonna be a bloodbath.
yeah, and you know, you can have tanks. I mean, the tanks are going to be going through streets, and it's very easy to set traps, have like mines and everything. It'd be a night. I mean, the Israeli death toll would probably be high. I mean, it would be dramatically higher uh, than I think the Palestinian one. It just wouldn't. There wouldn't be any benefit for it, and I think. I mean, there's also the other thing is that even if they do go in and they are committed, and it's like a stalemate, because it probably end up in a stalemate situation in like fighting terms over Gaza City. There's always that chance that Hezbollah could launch their attacks from Lebanon, which is uh, so. I mean, I just don't see. I don't see Israel, actually doing any sort of military maneuvers at this point.
But yeah, because I think they're realizing that they've lost international, like the EU was like, oh, we're gonna stop support for Palestine, and then like within 2 days they were back to supporting Palestine because I think they realized that like they can't like the, the ruling elite of the West are balancing a Jewish country that wants to genocide a racial minority, but also they're not a problem if they come over to the West, right? It's like I made a meme on Twitter about them being in a quantum state of being like evil terrorists and welcomed foreigners in the West, and you can't balance those two. So one of those views is going to
No,
win out, and honestly, it looks like the welcome all immigrants crowd is starting to make headways, while the genocide crowd in Israel is losing the elite, which is kind of interesting. I didn't really expect that, but we'll see how it goes.
I I mean, Kissinger, Henry Kissinger, he came out a few days ago and said, I think with Germany, he said, well, in
Yeah.
relation to Germany, that there's too many foreign people in Germany, and it's always been within the EU, especially within the most um, pro EU sort of individuals, that even they deep down know that they that the mass immigration has been that when it was had been a total disaster. I mean, Germany has been inviting Turks into into Germany for years. Like even when it was even before unification, and there has been ghettos. I mean, if you look at Netherlands and and Belgium, the problems that have been created there, and of course France in more recent times. So I think a lot in the EU are aware, and there is that problem that if, say, Israel were to go all in, you could have up to 2 million, maybe even more, refugees of Palestinian refugees, and they'll Egypt says they won't have them, Jordan won't have, the Arabs won't have them, and so they'll be sent to Europe, and then you've got a population of you know like mainly men as well, because there's usually a lot of them are young people, young men who could be like would pretty much be a paramilitary terrorists heading into the West, who've been trained in that sort of way, and so in many ways there is a great incentive to get Israel so they don't act, because I think and you look at some of the stats coming out of Germany, like districts where you have foreign-born, native-born, and it really is at the point where you can clearly say there is a replacement going on. It's not some fringe conspiracy theory now. It plays out in the data and the stats.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just a little distracted reading that apparently Iran is curtailing things. Palestine is saying, "Oh, we didn't know that some of our commanders were going to attack Israel." A lot of bullshit. But I don't
Yeah.
know. It seems like there's a lot of like attempts to tone down things because everybody knows that everybody loses if this blows up. I mean, like realistically, Israel would still win, and then you just have millions more migrants floating around. But I don't think I think the Europeans are aware that if they bring in like 2 million Palestinians, that the AfD will take over Germany and all of Europe will go nationalist pretty strongly. So I don't know. It's like it seems like it's I get the sense that the elite are bargaining because they're kind of up against a wall, and the Middle Eastern people are like, we really don't want to deal with this shit, but we'll push our advantages if we can. We'll see.
Yes, and Vingle in chat says, first time I've heard Cringe Walker saying he's sad about anything. Like, usually Cringe Walker, you're quite upbeat about like something going on. Is it been really
Well,
blackpilling for you?
it's watching a bunch of Christians get bombed in Palestine. That's kind of depressing. And also it's just like the knowledge that no one really cares to discuss the contradiction of like when a Muslim's in Europe, he's a friendly neighbor. When a Muslim's in Palestine, he's an evil terrorist. And somehow they like, depending on how far away you are from Jerusalem and how close you are to Brussels, the contradiction, it's like doublethink. I never like it. It gets depressing when people are just like balancing doublethink and unable to unwilling to
Yeah.
really where do you stand? Oh, both. It's like, okay, well then I'm not going to take you seriously. In the end, I think like the Western world is losing a lot of moral legitimacy from this because they're openly walking their contradiction. I did like seeing like the semi infighting with the elite, with like the State Department arguing against the State Department's pretty pro-Israel and the academic world is pretty pro-Palestine, and they're kind of like trying to cancel each other. It's kind of funny, but it's like at the same time, it's like whoever wins that argument still hates me, so what do I care?
Yeah. It seemed like in nearby city that we had pro you had like the sort of ethnic foreigners supporting Palestine, mainly Muslim, and then like fat overweight white women who can't get with white men, so they go with the ethnic foreigners. I mean, that's
I don't
brutal,
know.
but it's true. It's true. And then you have like boomicons, conservative types, and I guess like free speech absolutists who go with Israel.
Yeah. I was
And
looking at the.
both
I was like,
groups are.
sorry. Go on.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, both groups. I mean, both groups. When you bring down to it, and you talk about Britain or talk about English civilization, they both hate it. They come out from different ankles, but they both hate it deep down.
Yeah. I was looking at the different age brackets, and like, Zoomers and millennials support for Israel's down to like 25%, but boomers it's still 80%. And it's kind of like that's a very gaping hole really there. I mean, ultimately the current ruling elite are aware that they cannot maintain support for what they want because the younger generation just does not care and will not care. And the younger generation many times doesn't have the capacity to double think as much as the boomers can. And, the boomers went through 60 years or something of like Cold War propaganda, so they were spending their entire lives lying. The millennials and the Zoomers are kind of less tolerant to that way of living, and they're just gonna pick a side and stick with it. I don't know. Personally, I I don't know what's gonna happen in like 10, boomers are like in their 60s and 70s now, and that's like the average life expectancy, which means that every year henceforth, half of all boomers will die, basically. The population will just halve every couple of years, and that's going to be pretty massively devastating for their ballot boxes and their policies. Because a lot of these like millennial Israelis that were like hoping for continued Western support, they're going to have to fight for it like they're just another minority. A large portion of the idea that Israel's special comes from like Reagan era evangelical nonsense and dispensationalist
Yeah,
theology, and that's just all dying out now. So Israel can't really rely on Western support for the continued future. They got like maybe like top 7 years left of support. Like whoever's president next, that's probably gonna be the last president that's pro-Israel for like at least 50
I was
years.
going.
So
I mean, I imagine the evangelical population of America has drastically decreased since the 70s and 80s.
yeah, and
Today,
I'm not really a huge fan of Israel because they are an apartheid state. They're like a they're an ethno-nationalist fascist state that's apartheiding another group that's native there, and so that triggers my mildly left-wing politics. Um,
I mean, one thing that and even as a young boy, I never really understood, and I knew with evangelicals like Lindsey Graham and people like him, I their sort of undying love for Israel in a religious sense, in the way that they justified it, but at the same time that they were, and this when I was younger, they were. I was even able to identify. Well, you're kind of screwing over like the Christian population of the Levant, not just even in Israel, but also like in Palestine, Lebanon. That I mean, and you can talk about the what happened to the Christian community in Iraq after the invasion in 2003. I mean, it went from what 2.5 million to what is it now, like 100,000 something. It.
pretty much all Christians in the Middle East west of Iran have either died or fled to Europe. I don't mind the Christian migrants because they're not going to bomb me and be fucking assholes, but like pretty much the last place Christians are safe is ironically like Iran and a few parts of Egypt, and that's about it. And
Yeah.
just
Oh, and
watching
Syria.
and
Syria
Syria,
quite.
Syria.
Yeah.
But the problem is
Yeah. I mean,
Syria is
that.
also Syria's Christians still fled because they were like occupied by ISIS for 2 years, so like they didn't want to stay there and get killed. Iran doesn't have a Syrian a ISIS problem, so they stayed. But still, it's kind of
Yeah. I
like
mean,
yeah.
I was going to say, Bronze Age pervert made a statement saying that Assad was a cryptic, like a crypto Christian.
He is.
I don't know if that's
He
true or
gives
not.
no. He is a crypto Christian in the sense that whenever like Russians or Greeks visit like Greek dignitaries. He'll take them down to like the road the road to Damascus where Paul was converted. Like he gives tours to Christian holy sites to visiting dignitaries. He loves showing off serious Christian history. And in many ways, like I forget the religious minority that Assad is, because he's not a Muslim. He's some kind of like weird Middle Eastern religion that like is borrows some Islam.
Alawites.
Yeah,
Is
Alawites
it
are like
Alawites?
yeah, Alawites are kind of like the Mormons of the Middle East. They're kind of like a hodgepodge of beliefs. And that's just
Yeah.
like a public religion that the leadership doesn't really care about. I think he married a Christian. I don't know, but like
Yeah, she was English. She was English. His
yeah.
wife. She's from England.
So like
Yeah.
publicly, because
'Cause,
the Alawites are the like ruling religion, he has to give face to them. But how he acts and how he shows off his country, he's clearly Christian. And so like from his he's defended a lot of the Christians in Lebanon and Syria and elsewhere. Hezbollah right now is like a third of it is Christian, because when ISIS came in, so many Muslims died fighting ISIS that they had to start hiring Christian soldiers to buttress the ranks of Hezbollah. So Hezbollah itself is like a Syrian-funded semi-Christian organization now. That's also why they stopped being terrorists, because the Christians took over a little bit. Not entirely. There's still a minority within Hezbollah, but it's kind of funny how like in the span of 10 years, Hezbollah went from this like ultra-Islamic, I think, I forget, Sunni or Shia like movement.
Shia Muslim. Yeah, Shia Muslim. Yeah.
Yeah. To now like we respect Christians, to now like some of our generals are Christian, so they'll probably be Christian in like 10 more years. But the Christian minority in the Middle East is still trying to like scratch out a living between these people. Change of topic. I was seeing someone mention Bibi. I'm not convinced if Bibi stands down on Gaza, which I think he's standing down in Gaza now. It was originally because it was like a rainstorm that delayed the invasion, but it seems as though there's significant Western pressure on him to stand down. The rainstorm may have just been the public excuse. If he stands down, he's getting kicked out of office. So he's up against the wall. I'm not convinced Bibi is going to be the prime minister of Israel for till the end of the year. If he stands down, he didn't respond to these terrorist threats, they'll kick him out. And from the Western perspective, this is the removal of a ultra right wing leader of Israel, so they can bring in like some left wing retard, and that will effectively make Israel just like another progressive state that's going to be fighting those darn conservatives in the desert. I don't know. I'm just not convinced that Bibi can maintain power if he doesn't do something. But if he does do something, he's like, from Israel's perspective, if it goes into Gaza, it's not alienating them from their Middle Eastern neighbors, but the EU is probably going to pressure them. And Biden, of course, is no fan of Israel, so or at least Bibi's government. So if he goes into Gaza, he's getting like kind of cut off from funding. If he doesn't go in, he's losing his political career. So he's got a choice to either commit suicide or invade, and both of those are going to end with him being poorer. So Israel itself is also up against a wall in terms of like actually how do they respond to this attack, and then if they respond, they're losing Western support, because it can't just be a mild response. They want to like do like a shock and awe campaign. But if they do that, they're losing Western support. Like the right now in the West, there's like an argument between progressives and defense contractor people. The defense contractor peoples want a war to make money off of, and the progressives are like, we don't want to support an apartheid state. And essentially, the West kind of like fucked itself. They're like, oh, let's make progressivism our main political ideology. Oh no, they don't support Israel. How'd that happen? It's like, yeah, good job, retards. So it's kind of like watching the rats battle each other and not giving a shit. Like I really don't care about which way Israel goes. They're getting like demoted in terms of importance either way. I don't know. And there's also a question of like we are 13 months away from the election, and in the United States, and this is really driving a divide in the left, because you have the progressives that support Biden but don't support Israel, and you have the defense contractors that support Biden and Israel, and they're kind of battling each other. So Biden is essentially looking at like losing a third of his financial backing for the reelection. When that happens, there's always opportunities for backstabbing in the ranks, like betrayals for fortifying the election and stuff like that. So it's kind of like I don't necessarily care because the end result is Biden's not going to be able to maintain power. BB is going to be out, and probably Christians will get a break for 4 years.
I mean, that's actually a good point, which I might move on to that, because I've noticed in this country, and I imagine in America it's the same, that in the political elite you have like the support of Zionism is pretty strong in the political elite in Britain, amongst the elite, but the political elite's client groups, so like Pakistani Muslims or Muslims in general in England's and Britain's cities, obviously don't. And you're having like this, I guess, like this huge disconnect between the political elite and their client groups, and their client groups are not, you know, are basically, it could be like a potential problem for them going forward if they have client groups that are going rogue on certain issues, like like Israel Palestine.
Yeah.
Are you seeing the same thing in America, like between the sort of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
ultra hardcore Zionists and say like because I know like a lot of like blacks and sort of other client groups, the African Americans are not, there's quite a few of them that, let's say, have a history of being quite hostile to
Yeah, and
Jewish and Zionists.
this is a pretty good piece of evidence that a lot of this is vengeance motivated, not power motivated. Because if you were a competent Zionist, you are aware that you have endless support from white Christian Americans in a healthy economy. So you would want to take care of your like support base in order to maintain your power. But because these shit libs hate white people, they're literally destroying their own support base and wondering why their empire is crumbling apart. So it's based off of a hate of white people, because if it was competency and sane, they would take care of their white people. They don't. So it's kind of one of those like absolutely retarded things. Like I put like a thing on Twitter as a joke. It's like what a masterstroke of the Ashkenazi IQ in bringing in thousands of anti-Zionists into the West and wondering why there's no support for Israel. It's like these people are fucking retarded. But
I mean, I think, chickens are coming home to roost.
and I'm reminded in Tolkien of Saruman. Saruman's assemblage of force in the Middle Ages and in the Middle Earth was kind of a Frankenstein monster of like wild men in the north, orcs of Mordor, his own Uruk-hai that he invented, and like turncoat Rohan. So it was just this Frankenstein monster of a force. And what Tolkien is interested in with this is that there was never actually an invasion of Isengard, right? It was just nature taking the course on this Frankenstein, right? The trees occupied Isengard. And I find that to be a pretty good explanation of what happens with these Frankenstein political movements, like modern leftism in the West, where like you post together these like contradictory groups that hate each other and tell them to vote for you.
Yeah.
And now when push comes to shove, you can't maintain all your voter bases to like all your bases of support when a crisis comes up. Like what the fuck are you thinking was gonna happen? You literally just fucked yourself because you're retarded. You have power for like 4 to 8 years or like like a decade that they've had power since Obama, and you're like immediately falling apart because you never thought about long-term familial relations between your base. Competent leaders keep the peace between their base of support and attempt to maintain the keys of power. Basically, these people can't. They're just retarded.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, and I've been looking into a bit more like the American, political history from like civil rights era onwards. And one thing I noticed with America, if you look at American history, is the values of, let's just say, not I want to say values, but the how Americans viewed sort of society, politics, all aspects of life, was very much state determined. And so, in like an election, like say in the Deep South, it would vote quite heavily Democrat, and North and Midwest you vote Republican or whatever, and that would be sort of like the permanent settlement for since the Civil War, the end of the Civil War onwards. and so you would know which state where you stood, because like Alabama would vote heavily Democrat, and Georgia and places like that. But then you have the sort of you have this sort of big tent style politics, and it sort of culminates into the civil rights movement, as you said, and you have like this coalition of, okay, now we have like white college educated women, you have black African Americans, and then you have Jewish Americans, and you have Catholics, Irish Catholics, Italians, and you got like this coalition. And ultimately they did usurp the WASPs, as you Americans refer to them as, the white Anglo-Saxons, Protestant types. And the problem is, I think there was a genuine belief that sort of patchwork of groups, and newly included ones like LGBT and all that, were able to keep a hold, will be able to be united and hold on to society together. And um, yeah, I mean, it has, and so like every like election cycle in America, it's the election to end all elections. If it's literally the end of democracy or something like that. And uh, and I think the problem is, and we see it. I see it even in this country. You can't have a nation and society where everything is urban versus country, white men versus women, black versus white, young versus old. You can't have just a society, because no society in history has ever functioned like that.
Yeah, they
It's
they really
it's
thought
just
they
not
could,
possible.
like, and this is a common theme with progressive politics where they think they can, like, ignore the entire history of humanity and just implement, like, something new, and it just never works. Like, it's like
No.
every once in a while, progressives get something up their butt that they don't like, and they think they can exercise it from humanity, and every time it fails. It was like, exercise capitalism failed, exercise hate failed, exercise nationhood failed. It's just like fail, fail, fail. It's like, just stop trying. You're just wasting people's lives and time. Complete
It's very interesting you
disaster.
say that, because I was um I was watching a documentary. It was actually a few days ago, and it was on Sitting Bull. The native, the Sioux tribe after Little Bighorn. And you had like Sitting Bull, and you had Crazy Horse. Those sort of, General Custer, that whole saga. You aware of that, Cringe Walker?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Do I was watching a documentary on the Native American Sitting Bull.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's basically how the I guess you could say how the Sioux were put into reservations. And I was thinking, I was watching it, and I thought to myself, is there going like what sorts? Because I know there's going to be like some progressive spin on this and whatever. But what's quite interesting is, while I was watching it, and I got the feeling that the Sioux people, when it comes to like letters, accounts at the time, they didn't really care that they were killed in battle, or that their warriors were killed in battle, or that they were a good portion of them caught diseases and died off, because that's just a fact of life at that time. They were fully aware of that sort of lifestyle. It wasn't like anything new or shocking by that point, at least. But one thing that really angered them and sort of sparked revolts, was that the Sitting Bull and that sort of tribal hierarchy, when they were put on reservations, the American government actively abolished it. So, they were told by like these reservation agents, "Oh no, you're not. You, you're no longer chief. Yeah. By the way, this person's no longer chief. He's just another man." All men,
Mm.
and then basically you have like these signs where they're all men, all voices are equal. They're all equal as each other. And you have
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this breakdown of tribal society amongst like this deeply warrior caste uh, sort of people. And watching it, even I don't sort of get all teary eyed or anything, but I was actually quite sickened to the stomach because for them that was like, I mean that is like it really was um really really nasty, underhand sort of tactic, because it basically it it humiliated the chieftains, the whole structure of society, and you know that was the trigger for many of them. It wasn't like the education or the missionaries, because a lot of them will tell you now, oh, it's the Christian missionaries it wasn't any of that. It was that they actively sought to, they brought down, and they created like this ridiculous. I mean, it was. I don't want to sound like some sort of boomer go, oh, it's communism, but it kind of was like a communist commune in some ways.
Yeah, the United States has always had this weird obsession with changing the cultures of a people, and that always fails. Like, there's never been a successful example of that. And I know every couple of years you have a new generation of retards who think they can solve the like conversion crisis of like non-liberal communists, and it just always fails. It's like, what? Why? There has to be some like giant monument, like an arc they like the Arc de Triomphe, but it'll be like an Arc de Defeat of just like all the times that this has been tried and failed, like a 200-meter tall stone Arc de Defeat of just all the attempts that has failed. So every stupid fucking liberal sees it and realizes you're not special, you're not better, you're just gonna make the same mistakes. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and Alison, there was also like the Indian Bureau and Alcohol Trust sort of upon them. Yeah, because they were given like a lot. I think, what was it they were addicted to? It was like cod liver oil or something, something like that. They were
Who
like given
knows?
like large quantities of cod liver oil. I mean, it was really like, so I could actually, after watching that, I actually sympathise with a lot of the natives, because I always wondered, like, the chip on the shoulder, but but I can actually see why. But I think a lot of natives now so of course they're a client group as well for the progressives, and they'll probably talk about Columbus or something like that till they're blue in the face. But actually looking at that, that was like, you know effectively they had like terroristic liberalism thrusted upon them. Sort of fundamentally.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway,
um,
I'm probably gonna have to head out soon. Sorry for the quick in and out, but
no, that's all right. That's all right. Um, so yeah, I was going to say before you head off, what's the
I was just gonna.
situation like
I
in?
should. I should answer the last question from Son of Hastor. Yeah, like the only time it really worked, if you want to call it worked, is when we like completely obliterated the post-war German culture. But that was also there's a reason for that. Like, obviously it didn't work that way in Japan or elsewhere. It worked in Germany because Germany was already dying. For fun, I collected like demographic documents from the 1930s from Germany, and virtually all of them, like communist, fascist, democratic, whatever, whoever wrote the documents, they're all kind of in consensus that Germany was dying as a nation. The birth rate was collapsing, people were going into degeneracy and all kinds of things like that. And like when we took over Germany in the 1940s, you were kind of at the end of a civilizational epic in Germany. Germany had already been dead since like the 1920s, and fascism itself really never succeeded in turning that around. Like, it broke even for like a few weeks at a time and then failed again. The birth rate never really that great succeeded. People did not return to church. The culture did not reinvigorate. It was kind of like almost like a pause from the decline, not a restoration. Uh, and when we took over Germany in the 1940s, it just went back to falling apart to pieces. The reason why America could so radically change German culture in the 1940s is because German culture had already died. It was already gone. And this happens in history where someone takes over at the end of a civilizational epic, and they assume it's because of their cultural brilliance and superiority, but in reality it's because the host country was already dead. Like, you're just putting something new over a grave. You're not actually like out competing them. Like another example of that is like Gothic culture when the Roman Empire collapsed. By the time the Goths took over Rome, the Roman culture was already dead. They had no concept of loyalty, of faithfulness, of family. It was already gone, and it had been gone for like 150 years. The Goths were simply able to build something on top of the ashes. It's not that they were culturally superior to the Romans, that the Romans no longer had a culture to compete with.
Do you know what's depressing about that though, Cringe Walker? Even in that, you're right, 100% right. But Charles Oman did, he says that, he says what was strange about it was that he said it was like a civilization just gave up. They just gave up. There was no energy.
Your
And
civilization is doing that right now.
Yeah, pretty much. And what made it during that time is the sun was blotted out of the sky because you had that period of what was like volcanic ash in the atmosphere, and sun was blotted out. Everything was actually quite dark and sort of grim. And you had like the Goths, and northern Italy was completely depopulated. That's why the Lombards came in and populated it. And the funny thing, but even amongst all that, the Latin population still had like a heavily in-group preference.
Yeah.
And what's depressing is we can't say that now, though. We have no in-group preference now. And again, I mean, I was saying, at least when the Goths took over Italy and of course Spain, Hispania, they didn't allow the new arrivals to run around the streets and like kill and behave like savages. There was actually like a strong society was still there. You had separate laws for Romans and Goths, but you couldn't just like run onto the street and start looting or go on like a looting, robbing people. I mean, today you just have complete lawlessness in towns and cities.
Yeah, I think it's worth.
Foreigners.
It's probably worth considering something because, like, although the Roman culture was dying, local cultures were growing, homegrown cultures like Venice, like Sicily, like Napoli, and Milan.
Yeah.
So there is a way to translate your culture through the dying because the Italians managed to do that. And what you English folk have to figure out is how do we translate our cultures across this great ravine? Because this is a great ravine, it's a great filter, and your host country, like this idea of a British Empire, that's the culture that's dying right now. How do you bring forth into that to pass the ravine something homegrown, something local that will flourish in those ashes? And that's really the question you have to ask. America is still at a cultural epic height point. We've got like another century or two of culture left here. And even now it seems to be like reinvigorating itself with different local areas. But for you guys, once that British culture is dead, how are you gonna prevent your culture from like being replaced with like Pakistanis and Indians? Because they're the up and coming group that's going to take over. How do you translate your culture across that ravine and come out on the other side on top, like the Hispanias and the Italian city states did? Because that's what that's the long game you have to think about.
I believe people. I believe people deep down, as we've seen in Australia recently, people deep down, even if they can't say it or they can't articulate in public, people deep down the lizard brain know that what an English person is and what Rishi Sunak is. Rishi Sunak may have an accent, he may wear the suit, but at the end of the day, he's still an Indian. That's the reality of it. They know what English people is. I would actually say, I talked about Alexander Adams earlier. It's going to have to come through art. It's going to have to come through stories, oral traditions. It's going to have to come through that. It's going to have to be told locally, and it's going to have to resonate with a people and the sort of the spirit of a people. And that's how I think it can be introduced. And then anything political or anything that obviously, as we know, be top down, whatever that would be. But I think I do wonder though, as you said, when the boomers die off, if that would be a turning point, because then all the all the constraints, all the legacy from the the post Second World War indoctrination and Cold War, all that legacy will go, because it won't. The new
Yeah.
generations won't be
Y-
affected by that.
There's this period in the 400s and early 500s where, like the what I think Gibbons calls it the last of the Romans, where that like boomer generation that lived on the empire is dying out, and the Goths are taking over and marrying into like the princess royalties. It's like the end of the last embers of Republic Rome and Imperial Rome and the start of medieval Europe. And you do have this like sudden and catastrophic shift of power from the emperors and the Praetorian guards to the Gothic kings, to such an extent that whole cities calling themselves Romans just started calling themselves French or Goths in like a few years. Um, and fun fact: the Gauls started reinvigorating their culture because they had become Romanized, but then they became Gauls again under the Franks, and then eventually started calling themselves Franks finally. But there comes that time when the generation that was barely holding together the empire is gone, and the kids take over, and they just don't value the same things, and they're not going to value the same things. And millennials, they don't seem to value anything, so it's probably going to fall to the Zoomers to actually build something. um Millennials just seem to be interested in like taking the ashes from civilization and smoking them and sitting their fat ass and doing nothing for the rest of their lives. But they'll starve like everyone else when the time comes, and they'll have to either make a living out of it or pass away with the boomers. Um, and that's just the way it goes, unfortunately. Like, again, you guys in Britain are at the end of your imperial cycle. You're the last generation of the empire is dying off, and when they're gone, it's not like the millennials will know how to run the show. They can't. They haven't shown any evidence that they can. Maybe some like figure will emerge that didn't know they were competent until they were put up against the wall. But these people often get killed off by lawlessness anyway. Like there were plenty of Romans who were like villagers and mayors of small towns who, when push came to shove, showed remarkable competency for a few years, but could not hold back the tide. Like their competency would have been useful 10 years earlier, but it was too late. And so they had like a couple of glory years, and they were immediately executed by the Goths. Ultimately, like
Mm.
tiny embers of competency can happen at the end, but they don't last, and they often get absorbed or destroyed by the incoming tide. So like, I was gonna say one day soon you'll find yourself ruled by foreigners, and your culture is a minority, but that already happened for you guys. Sorry. uh, but um like you England's probably in like the 500 time period now, where you're ruled by foreigners, you're a leader of foreigners, your bureaucrats of foreigners. There's really nothing left of the British Empire's original population. Like, all the Romans are gone. The last of the Romans are dying off. And like, what are you going to do to preserve your culture and come out the other side? That's it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I think that that's fair. Is we've got a pretty powerful Indian elite, and they're not going away anytime soon. It's quite interesting. I was reading the. I'll let you go soon, but I was
Mhm.
reading the. It was called the Iranian Intermezzo, which was basically the period of Iran. Um, I guess from the Abbasid Caliphate to the Seljuk Turks' arrival and conversion to Islam. And basically, as you know, the Russian Caliphate and the Umayyads pretty much just tag teamed the Sassanids and the
Yeah.
various rump states that was from that, and Zoroastrianism and was complete. I mean, what I say, the Persian Zoroastrian hierarchy and dynasties were completely defeated.
I've
It
got
was
I've got
Iran
this
was
book.
completely overrun.
Yeah. Sorry, finish your thought.
Yeah, and but I was just going to say, there was a point though during, because of course the Abbasid Caliphate was started. The Abbasid was a political movement, and it was started in the region of Khorasan, which is I believe it's like I may have pronounced it incorrectly, but it was a huge like Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, and
Yeah.
it was like started by this Zoroastrian who converted to Islam, and he was a general in the Abbasid army, and it was basically like a sort of coalition of Iranian Zoroastrians and Iranian Muslims and like slaves and all sorts of groups, and then of course after that, when you had the sort of breakup of the caliphate, you had like Iranian, Persian, I should say, houses rising, and like one of them, he was like who rose up. I think it was the Samnids. I think they one of them claimed descendants from the Sassanids, and then like this is one that was he was like a street urchin. He was just like a street urchin who became like a um um like I don't know what they referred to themselves. So I don't know, it was like sultan, but he carved out like this huge bit of territory.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, you do have like, and that was like the Iranian sort of Persian upswing, because I mean that was the last time the Arabs had any control over Iranian territory. Sorry, continue what you were going to say, Chris
No,
Walker.
I was gonna say I have this book I've been meaning to go through. I've read parts of it. It's called Western Aristocracies and Imperial Court by John Matthews. It's been a pretty good book exploring the breakdown of the Imperial Court and how the Goths infiltrated and took it over. Like it
All
goes
right.
through, yeah, it explores different like senators and praetors and how the Goths married in or kidnapped them or killed them or took over, and like basically the path from like Roman Empire to Gothic state. It's a really great book so far. It's about like 300 pages. It's about 400 pages. It's a nice book. A couple of years old, but I've liked it.
Yeah, Charles Oman, I've been sort of referencing on this channel and Twitter for a bit. He there was a book that was called Charles Oman, the Dark Ages, and it's like this epic from from the sort of collapse of the Western Roman Empire to about, I think, Otto the First. And so it covers this huge period, and he sort of says, like, the Ostrogoths, as you mentioned, like, intermingled with the Roman population quite heavily. But he says the Visigoths actually it was kind of like an apartheid state for a long time, and where for a long time, uh, for nearly, I think he said nearly about 100 years, the the sort of Hispanic, sorry, not Hispanic, the Spanish, sort of Latin population was sort of, they would have sort of minor, they'll have like minor titles, but they wouldn't be active in the sort of in the courtly politics until they abandoned Arianism. I think it was like in 511. Um, and you wouldn't see like, you know, and then from them, like the church, it was up until the Muslim conquests of Visigothic Spain. For you actually had like this really interesting, where the various bishops, like of Valencia and Septiminia and Cordova, they basically became, they turned the Visigothic kings into their puppets, near enough, or as he puts it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. There's a lot of interesting things that happened. How the Visigothic kingdoms fell to the Muslims is also an interesting history, because it was a lot of taking advantage of creeping Roman bureaucratic rot that survived. Anyway,
yeah,
I'm
but
gonna head.
basically, yeah. No, you head off, and we'll probably end the stream here. But I mean, overall, just to summarize, yeah, if you're a Westerner, don't sort of simp for foreign like ethnic groups, because it's,
Oh,
there's so many problems where here in the West, and as I say, I'm the amount of young people, especially like white people in this country, who are absolutely going bananas over this. It's just depressing, and we outsourcing
yep.
national rage, because of course the thing is, I would say to, you know Israel and the Palestinian side, both of them, don't look back in anger. Get Oasis on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway,
thank you all for
yeah.
watching. Yeah, thank you, Cringe Walker. Good night, and
Have a good one over there.
hopefully we can stream again soon when I haven't got COVID.
All right, see ya. Oh, I'll wait till you're not live.
Yeah, no, see ya. And thank you everyone for joining in, and I will see you all next time.